Hey, welcome everybody. I hope you're having a good Thursday morning. Welcome to our webinar on social media for SMEs. This is the first webinar that we have in a new series called SME Export Talks. We're hoping these events won't just be webinars. Indeed, this one was hoped to be a physical event to start with. However, we've all had to adapt to COVID-19. So this SME Export Talk series is actually sponsored by Arise Plus Cambodia, and Eurocham is working in close collaboration with Arise Plus so that we can share information relevant to SMEs in Cambodia. And of course, the main aim is to help them internationalize and start to export. This is in alignment with other initiatives that Eurocham has on at the moment. One of these that I would encourage any SME on at the moment to take part in is our Getting Your Products to Europe initiative. For this, we'll be having a free training for SMEs wanting to get their getting their products to Europe. They'll be able to present their products in a pitch event to allow them to attend a leading German digital trade fair. And so I'd really encourage anybody on this webinar today to take part in that. Overall, Eurocham itself will be playing a heavy role in supporting SMEs export in collaboration with Arise Plus and numerous other programs. So just to introduce you to our first event today, of course, this event is focusing specifically on social media for SMEs. Of course, many SMEs in Cambodia are not yet exporting. However, as part of this webinar, we'll be trying to delve into those aspects where SMEs really can start to, if they're already operating successfully in Cambodia, start to think about how to use social media to export. To introduce myself, my name is Tom Hesker. I'm the Deputy Director at Eurocham. Previously, I managed the Investment Services Department, where we focused on facilitating the market entry of firms interested in Cambodia and research projects particularly aligned to trade and investment promotion and private sector development. To introduce you briefly to our agenda, overall, the event will last from around 10 a.m. to 11:20 a.m. It's divided into three parts: an introduction session, the presentations by our speakers, and finally, a Q&A. And the Q&A will be first moderated questions from myself, and then we'll invite participants to ask questions in the chat box. So in your Teams screen, you should be able to see a little chat box. This is where we would ask you to write questions, and you can write a question at any point, and we'll try and address it at the end of the presentation. So today, I'm very happy to be joined by Arise Plus Cambodia. Our speaker, Guillaume Malteven, will introduce you to the objectives of Arise Plus in Cambodia at the moment. They have a number of exciting initiatives, which Guillaume will share in more detail. Our talks themselves are divided into three perspectives. We're going to have the perspective of a communications firm, giving an overview. We'll have the perspective of SME, and the communications firm is Mango Tango, represented by Nancy Jaff and Chris McCarthy. We'll have the perspective of an SME collective. Hopefully many of you are familiar with Cult and Carola Kranz, who will give you the overview of her own initiatives in this space and the strong points and maybe the weak points that she's seen in some of her own Cult brands. And finally, we'll have the perspective of an exporting SME, and this will be from Vanna, who represents Dorsu, an SME representing sustainable garments that has begun to export and is using social media to do so. So with that brief introduction, I'll now pass over to Guillaume Malteven, who will give an introduction to the Arise Plus program. Apologies, actually, no, there is one more aspect before passing on to Guillaume. It is the protocol. So we do have a number of questions, of course, that we get for each one of our webinars. The first of these is, if you cannot hear, sadly, there's not too much we can do about this. If our internet connection breaks out, there's not too much we can do for this. What I would say is just, if you cannot hear, kindly check your internet connection again, sign back into the Teams meeting, and check your speakers. If we suffer a complete internet failure, Eurocham will record the talk, and we'll drop out the call here. We'll record the talk and we'll send it in a YouTube link to all of the participants registered. If you have a question, as I mentioned previously, please type it in the chat box, stating your name and which of the presenters that your question is for. You can also state that it's for all presenters. If there's background noise, please make sure you're muted at all times. And if you have any feedback on the webinar, how it's organized, any improvements that you think could be seen, please feel free to email our communications officer at the email address below. And of course, you would have already had this email address in the initial invites. So now I will pass on to our second speaker, Mr. Guillaume Maltavin of Arise Plus Cambodia. So Guillaume, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tom, and thank you, Eurocham, for organizing this event. Just a few words about myself. I joined recently the Arise Plus team, and prior to this, I've been working in different countries in Europe and as well as in Cambodia for 3 years, where I could learn a lot by working at Eurocham. So just a few words about who we are and what we do. First of all, the term ARISE stands for ASEAN Regional Integration Support. This is a program commissioned and co-financed by the European Union and the German Federal Ministry for Economic Development and Cooperation. This project is implemented by GIZ, the German Agency for International Cooperation. And if you want to know more, you are more than welcome to visit our website. And actually, we released a newsletter last week. This project provides technical assistance in different trade areas, and one of those is focusing on SME in export. So as such, we support SMEs in establishing strategies for export, and we also support the public dialogue mechanism. Any issue related to export is important for us. Now, specifically related to trade info events, when you will see this logo, you will know this is an event dedicated to export for SMEs. So Eurocham will organize a series of 8 events until 2022. I'm very pleased to announce the next one. It will be about quality and standard certification for SME, which are absolutely needed for exporting any product. It will likely occur in June or July, so stay tuned. You will be well informed by Eurocham. I can say a few other topics. So Eurocham will organize event as well for about export opportunities in the ASEAN, logistics services for export, and export regulation, in particular customs regulation. We do all of this event because we think the key for successful business is to access to validated and truthful information, and especially when it comes to export, which can be complicated. For each event, we will publish a brochure. So you can see on this slide the cover page of the very first edition. You could find out in this brochure the relation between social media for SME and export performance. I would like to attract your attention about one of the features of this brochure. There are 5 QR codes in it. And by scanning the QR code, you could download a tutorial about how to use social media for business. So 1 QR code per social media, so YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We initially wanted to disseminate the brochure during a physical event. However, due to the circumstances, it is not possible, but the brochure is available on our website. You can download it from now on. So when I was started to make some research and to understand better the topic, I found this very interesting report released by the World Economic Forum. It's called Future of Consumption in Fast Growth Consumer Markets, ASEAN. And one of the key findings related to social media is, first of all, the population is growing very fast, and the majority of population is young in Southeast Asia. And this younger generation spend a lot of time on the internet, especially on social media. And the way they will use social media is not only for social life or for private life purposes, it's also to consume and to look for information about new products. And the way this younger generation will use social media, they associate their research with some values. That's why one of the key findings for me is they are concerned about health and sustainability. Why I am saying this is because a lot of SME we approach here in Cambodia are focusing on top quality products. For instance, agro-processing companies want to export organic products. So I can see there is a match between the Southeast Asian younger generation and what Cambodian SME are able to do. My last slide, it is from another report. Google released a report last year with the support of 2 consulting firms about digital consumption, how it was impacted by COVID-19. And what was very interesting is they made a study in country where severe restrictions were imposed. If you think Metro Manila, Kuala Lumpur has been under lockdown for several weeks and several months. As a result, many consumers started to use digital services for the first time. And one of the key findings is when the restrictions were lifted, these consumers are continuing to use digital services, and it includes social media. And we can see this trend is very similar everywhere in Southeast Asia. And we could say COVID-19 has accelerated this trend everywhere, and it doesn't depend on the level of economic development. You can see Singapore and Indonesia share almost the same data on this chart. So that's why we think to organize an event on social media makes sense. It is very, very relevant due to the circumstances as well. So thank you very much for your attention. I wish you all a very good event. So Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. Okay, so then we'll move on to our first presenter of the day, and this is Chris McCarthy and Nancy Jaffe of Mango Tango. So Chris and Nancy, please share your presentation slides, and we can launch into the first set of content.
Great, thank you. Okay, one moment. Okay, can everybody see the slide here?
Yes, we can see the slides. Participants, if you cannot, please type in the box.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, Chris.
Well, here's a short bio of ourselves. So my name is Chris McCarthy, and I am the CEO of Mango Tango Asia, and we were founded in 2014. Here in Cambodia, and we help both local and multinational regional companies to communicate, market their firms. We do everything from produce videos to build websites to manage social media campaigns and everything in between. My colleague here is Nancy Jaffe.
Hi, everyone. It's really great to get to present. We're just a little disappointed we weren't able to do it in person today, but hopefully that will come in the future. I'm also at Mango Tango Asia, been here since the beginning. And like Chris, we both have a very strong background in digital marketing for many years and a strong background in regional marketing. So that we are very familiar with ASEAN marketing as well as here in Cambodia, and look forward to sharing some insights today.
Okay, so today we are going to cover using social media for small and medium businesses, mostly for marketing and sales and finding customers. If you are already an expert in social media, then some of this information might seem regular and normal for you, but hopefully it will help everyone to understand the context and how to start planning and what are the effective tools to use for social media for your small and medium enterprise. So we'll cover why to use social media, talk about setting your strategy, setting your goals, the difference between business to business selling and business to consumer selling, what are the right channels, appropriate channels for to use, and then we'll talk about target audience and the importance of selecting the right target audience. We'll talk about creating content and the kind of content to use on social media and how important that is, the use of influencers and how to effectively engage with your followers or fans or prospects. We'll talk also a little bit about community management, because one of the key aspects of social media is that it is two ways. So people can write back to you, and that's actually an important topic all by itself. And then finally, we'll talk about boosting or promoting your posts and how to measure your success. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about social media and how that can support exporting and internationalization of your company. So why use social media? I think obviously if you're here, you understand the importance of social media and how marketing has changed even just over the last 10 years or the last 5 years. And today we'll talk a lot more in detail about that. But when you we understand when you run a small business, your work is never done, and there's lots and lots of different tasks to take care of. But there are good reasons to add social media to your to-do list, and to think of it as something to put up front as a priority and not something to do just when you have time. Most importantly, your customers expect to see you there. If you're a business, especially if you want to sell locally and in particular internationally, your customers will expect to find you there. Not having a social media presence is sort of like not having a business card and just saying you don't believe in them. It also helps to build your credibility, especially if you engage with the larger community and influencers who are in your space. And it also makes you reachable and findable.
So we know, again, how challenging it is to run a business. And we understand that social media sometimes gets relegated to more junior people on the team, or an intern or a nephew. But we want to emphasize you have to think of it strategically. And if you build a digital marketing strategy, you'll be better off in the long run. It takes a little time up front to really think about what you want to do, who you want to reach, how you're going to reach them, but it saves time and effort in the long run and ensures that you'll have a more successful social media initiative. So we'll talk a little bit about how to, what to think about and how to prioritize.
And just to underline what Nancy said, it is important to take some time, maybe a half day, maybe a couple of half days with you or your team, and really think about what's a priority and what are your goals and what the strategy is. And we find that actually putting that in a document helps you come back to it, execute it, and make it real. So not just thinking about it or talking about it, but actually developing a plan. And you'll find that actually if you go back to that 3 months later, a year later, it's a great way to see if what's worked and what hasn't worked, and to readjust. So setting goals. Obviously, there's a lot of different aspects to social media. Social media can build awareness of who you are. It can increase interest in you. You can use social media channels to get leads, to actually actively promote sales, to drive different kinds of behavior, and importantly also to create engagements with your fans, with your followers, with prospects, with your customers. And each of these things might have different tactics attached to it for how you implement these on social media. So setting goals and deciding what's important up front will help you decide what to communicate, what to post, what kind of content to develop for social media.
And just to build on how to think about your social media presence, you really have to think about who you're trying to reach. Do you sell directly to business? Are you B2B? Or are you reaching out directly to consumers? This has major implications for your social media presence. If you're reaching consumers, they are interested in lifestyle content, they like fun contests, they like to be engaged, they're looking for something interesting as they scroll through their Facebook feed. Whereas B2B buyers expect a much more serious tone. They're really looking for relevant information. What do you have to offer? How do they get in touch with you? And maybe turned off if you have something that looks a little too fun and casual in the way you present yourself.
And this will have implications for the kind of content, as Nancy was saying. We actually have one client who is a international tax advisor, and he's actually B2C, so he's mostly selling to consumers. However, where taxes are involved and business is involved, sometimes it requires a more serious tone. So even when you're selling to consumers, you have to consider your product and how it fits in. And should we tell the story now?
Well, we just wanted to use this as an example. Sometimes this may seem very obvious that you need the right tone for reaching your consumers, but it is quite common that small businesses, the man running this business, very, very busy man servicing his clients. So he had relegated his Facebook posting to a junior member of the staff. When we took a look at it, we saw that this junior person had posted many cartoons that had nothing to do with his business and that were rather inappropriate. Many of them were rather sexist in tone, which is quite a turnoff for women. And yet more than half of his clients were in fact women, often older women. So there was a complete disconnect in that case between what was going on his Facebook page and the potential consumers he wanted to reach.
And then also part of the reason he didn't notice is it's very difficult and time consuming to run a business. So it was something that, he thought he had solved the problem and gave it to a junior staff member, but didn't pay attention to it. But we'll come back to that later. So one of the most important things to do is to choose what are the appropriate channels to use for social media. And again, especially if you're a small business, it's very difficult to do all of them and to manage them effectively. So focusing on the right channel is what's important. Of course, as everyone knows, in Cambodia, Facebook is the internet. Facebook comes first for social media. That is not always the case in other countries, and certainly really not the case in, for example, the United States or the European Union, where Facebook is still considered very much about social connections and not business. But in Cambodia, of course, Facebook is critical as a place to be if you are in business here in Cambodia. If you are selling to other businesses, there's a lot of research that shows that Twitter is surprisingly effective as a tool for B2B social communications. And of course, LinkedIn is a very important platform, especially in that business-to-business environment. If you are a business-to-consumer company where lifestyle content might be more important, then obviously I think Instagram and YouTube are the right places to add after Facebook, certainly in Cambodia. And I will add that surprisingly, TikTok has become tremendously popular here in Cambodia. And just this week, Media Brands, which is a global multi-billion-dollar media company, signed a deal with TikTok because their FMCG clients were finding that a single popular video on TikTok would clear out the products on the store shelves. So don't underestimate TikTok either as a tool for getting your message out.
Yeah, and this is something, again, when you sit down and really think about your strategy, you do have to consider your presence. For example, as Chris mentioned, for B2B, it's really good to have a LinkedIn page for your business and for yourself because it adds credibility. Somebody's thinking of doing business with you, but they don't know you, they haven't met you. They want to know who you are and see something about your background. So for all of these channels, you really do have to consider putting some work in and getting yourself out there.
That's true. The trust factor also, if people are going to make a purchase from you and they don't know you that well, the depth and presence on your social media can help establish trust and credibility.
So target audience. Now, again, this may seem obvious, but we frequently find small businesses that have not really thought about who are they trying to reach and what do they want to hear from you, as well as what do you want to say to them. So you really do have to understand who you're talking to. As an example of our tax accountant whose content was completely inappropriate for his target audience, and again, he just hadn't done the work up front to think that through. target audience, especially as you start thinking internationally. You really have to consider different languages, different cultures, different customs, and put some parameters around how you speak to people, how you position yourself and your company.
And something I'll talk about a little bit later when we talk about boosting, but this is also a good place to talk about it. The social media platforms have very sophisticated tools that are built into them to segment your audience and talk to them potentially differently. So even like Facebook, for example, has different audiences that you can create, like targeting people in Cambodia or out of Cambodia. But also they have other tools that let you segment customers or prospects and communicate just to a particular audience. So if you take the time to learn about the more sophisticated targeting tools, you will get a better return on your investment. And whether that's just an investment of time and effort to create content, or if you're actually boosting posts, you will see a better return if the content is effectively targeted to the right people. And I will just add, for instance, a lot of people don't know, but Facebook has something called, actually all of the social tools have something called custom audiences, where you can upload your customer list and make sure to target where they've opted in and you have permission to market to them. But you can then actually target, for instance, just a particular segment of your existing customers or people you communicate with. So if you take the time to learn the targeting tools that are available, and there's plenty of videos online to teach you to do that, you will find better results from that. So content is king. This is an old saying, but it turns out that it is true. And having the right content to engage with and attract your audience and engage with your audience is critically important to having a successful social media presence. So the most important first thing is to find out what your audience is interested in, and then develop content that meets those needs. I will say that it is actually very helpful to take a step back, perhaps during the strategy and planning phase, and to develop what we call content pillars. So these might be 4 or 5 or 6 different content areas that you want to make sure to regularly post in. So one might be how to use your product, one might be promotions and sales, one might be lifestyle content, but it's helpful to think of regular pillars of content that you can post in, that you can create content in. And then it's also very helpful to develop a regular calendar posting schedule. Most companies that are effectively using social media do that once a month. So at the beginning of each month, they'll develop a regular content posting schedule and try to hit all of the different pillars or content areas that they want. Now, another reason this is very important is that at the end of the month, you can go back and look at all of the different content pieces or posts that you put on social media, and you can see which ones were more popular or which ones were less popular. And this will help you to develop over time a better understanding of what works to attract your prospects and make sales and get customers. One other very tactical thing to focus on is what kinds of content. Text is interesting, but so old-fashioned. What research shows gets the most attention is images with a few words that help you get noticed. The caption and the other information you can include, but good images are quite helpful. And also, just in the past couple of years, video content on social media has become the most effective form of content. Video has tremendous stopping power, much more than static images. So if you're capable, if you're able to do it, or if you have the time or resources, consider developing video. It's significantly more effective at gaining attention.
And developing content can be very time consuming, and this can be very challenging, especially for small businesses. So this is why we think that designing your content areas and having a schedule, you know you're going to do 3 lifestyle posts and 2 promotions, then you can have your team work on those all at one time. So you can develop all of your content a month in advance, so you're not constantly going back and forth and working on content. And really, again, have to emphasize it's better to have fewer, more powerful posts than trying to post every day and none of your posts get any attention.
Now, that's an excellent point. Creating content can be quite time consuming. So,
influencer marketing. Now, this really should be a topic in itself. We have a lot of experience with influencer marketing, a lot to say about it. It can be very effective, and we're finding in Cambodia there's a growing number of influencers that can have a powerful effect on getting your message out. But there are definitely some challenges and pitfalls to influencer marketing. So we'll just quickly top line how to start thinking about it. You should be thinking about it even as a small business, because influencers can have a big impact on your visibility and your sales. They bring their audience who are already engaged, and then you build on top of that. So how do you engage with influencers? Well, first of all, you do have to find the right influencers that fit your brand. If you have a sports brand, you look for sports people. If you have a food brand, you know, you might want to look for people who are somehow involved in the food industry or have a reputation there. And you have to do some research on your influencers. Not all influencers are equally valuable. What other brands have they worked for? If they work for a competitor brand, maybe you don't want them. If they have a lot of followers, they're going to cost more. If they have fewer followers, you have to make sure that it's still the right followers and that it's worth your time to engage. Getting in touch with them can take a little time. You can contact them directly, go through their agent, or use an agency to contact influencers on your behalf. We do warn you, you need to sign a contract. We've heard stories of people who don't sign contracts. Their expectations are not aligned with what the influencers ultimately post for them, and they have no recourse because there was no written agreement. So again, this is just very top line. Influencer marketing is great, but it does take some time and focus.
yeah, and I will underline that contract part is very important, just so that you both agree on the extent and the support that you're getting and how the posting is working. But again, as Nancy was saying, if you tap into the right influencers and they have a big audience, let's say it's for organic certification or you know, companies that have strong CSR initiatives, and you tap into an influencer who has a big audience in that space, that can really open up a big new audience, potential customers for your business. And there are also a lot of potential risks with influencers, but again, as Nancy was saying, this could be a whole topic on itself. But I will say that KOL and influencer marketing, which didn't exist 5 years ago, the way it does today, was very small. This is potentially a very important and key part of social media marketing. The next thing we wanted to talk about is engagement. Is making sure that you can encourage engagement in the social media posts and the posts that you do. Engagement is really important to get people to think about your company and your brand. So the goal is to have likes, comments, and shares. So something that's important to do, and you can Google this and look it up, is to understand what the engagement rate is and what it means. The engagement rate, which was developed by all the social media companies, is a formula. Basically, it's the number of people who saw your post divided by the number of people who interacted with your post. And interactions are likes, comments, and shares. This is the only common metric we have across a lot of different social media channels. And it actually turns out to be a pretty good metric of how well your content is doing, how well your content is engaging with your customers or connecting with your customers. So the more you can encourage engagement, the better off it will be for your brand and for your social media presence. Let me, by the way, add that the global engagement rate for any content posted is just under 1%. So a little less than 1 out of 100 people who see a post will actually comment, like, or share it. So, if you can get to 2% or 3%, then you'll know that's very good content, and that's something to continue developing. And as we were saying before, measuring and looking at what works and doing more of that is a really effective a way to be successful. And these platforms and the tools actually have all this stuff built into it. So just to add a little more to this, how to create engagement, creating posts that give people a reason to respond. Contests, simple games, polls where you ask a question. Of course, the best content is if you can create something really compelling that people want to, that is an engaging piece that people want to share. Make it quick and easy. As I said at the start, engagement with your post means people are engaging with your brand, they're making a connection, and that will help support your goals.
Yeah, and again, what is unique about social media is that we have these engagement tools. I mean, you can't read a newspaper and have all these comments and shares and likes. And we do think it's important that it's something that, again, a lot of small businesses, it's enough that they get the content out. They're not really thinking about, well, how am I engaging? But again, we recommend fewer posts that are more engaging. You'll get a lot more impact that way than just sending out a lot of content that nobody even notices.
Let's talk a little about community management. So as Nancy was just saying, social media is interactive and two-way, and that matters a lot. People are potentially engaging with you and asking questions. So as you have a social presence, you're developing a community, and that community might ask questions or make comments, and you have got to engage with them. We took over social media for a big company in Cambodia, and they had not engaged at all. There were a lot of angry people asking questions and saying, why don't you respond? Why don't you respond? This is actually a big problem globally, not just for small businesses, but for large businesses. So do think about how, if you are going to engage online, you do need to find time to go through the community, answer comments, answer questions, interact with your fans and followers. Having a regular schedule, once a day, every 2 days, to go online, depending on your volume, to go online and interact is important. Now, we actually had one small business we were working for who has a shop and was doing a great job of posting content and generating interest. But that was it. And we noticed and pointed out to him that every time he posted, people would post and say, where can I get this? How much does this cost? How can I order this? Crickets, like no answers from the owner, because he was too busy running his business. But he was leaving business on the table there by not interacting with his customers. So again, it is very important to set up regular time to go through and to engage, and even to talk to your fans. You don't always have to answer the questions.
Yeah, and again, just to reinforce this, because we run into this a lot, if you do not respond to comments, it's not just neutral, it's negative. People get very irritated when they've asked you about how they can get your product and you don't respond. So you have to set up a way to do that.
So just a couple more points we want to make. Starting with boosting or promoting your posts and measurement. So in today's world, Facebook and frankly all of the social media channels are pay to play. You can put out great content. Some of your followers will see it, some won't. But very few people will see your post unless you boost it. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, for the tech companies, social media is pay to play if you want to use it to promote and to get new fans, new prospects, new potential customers. So all of the channels have that built in, and you're going to have to pay money to be seen. It doesn't necessarily cost a lot. $1 or $2 per post in Cambodia will get you quite a lot of visibility. But also, I will say, most importantly, learn how to boost posts. If you accept the default that Facebook or Google presents to you, then you are paying too much. letting Google or Facebook decide how to spend your ad dollars is not as effective as if you learn a lot of the mechanics of it and dig into it and start testing and learning what works by yourself. It's not easy. It's not simple, but if you devote some time to it, over time, you will learn how to effectively promote and boost your posts. Something I usually say to new clients or prospects is the most expensive, least effective way to boost posts on Facebook is to accept the default. If you just do what they tell you, you'll get results, but you'll be spending too much money for those results. So if you can take the time to learn it, you will be more effective. And there's plenty of tutorials free from Google and Facebook, and plenty of stuff on Google about that. I would also recommend considering hiring an expert to do it, especially maybe as you're starting out, and then that you can learn from that person and then shift that in-house, but if that's what you want to do. But it is quite complicated to learn how to be effective at this. And this also relates to what I was saying before about audiences. You can boost different posts to different audiences, see what's effective, and it's very important to measure all of that and see what's working. The measurement is built into these tools. And this is, again, where I talked about engagement rate before. The engagement rate on your posts, even if you've boosted it and it's paid versus organic, the engagement rate is actually a fine measure across all of those things. So that's a great way to look at what is working for you. And finally.
Okay, and finally, we just wanted to say a few words about using social media to grow your export business, which obviously is a key topic of this whole series. And again, something worthy of a lot more discussion than we can give it today. But point number one is you have to have an online presence if you want to do business international. Customers will expect to find you online. Now, the first step there is typically a website. Many companies here, small companies, do not have websites, but if you're looking to build an international business, you absolutely must be able to be findable on a website. But social media also is very important and can be very valuable. It can be a first step in building connections. It's a way to increase your international contacts and ultimately customers. It's a way to build awareness of your business among that broader target audience. It's also a great place to learn about what customers want and what your competitors are doing. I mean, these are other aspects of social media that are very valuable. Now, I will say, if you're looking to use social media for your export business, most likely you need to build a separate social media presence. It may not be the same channels you're using here in Cambodia. It should be English language. But in many countries, not everyone speaks English. For example, in much of the Spanish-speaking world, you actually need to have a presence in Spanish. So these are issues to think about as you're thinking about your export strategy. The design may be different. International design may have different standards, different looks. You want people to feel very comfortable that you are a vendor they can trust. So you need to make sure that your graphic design, your language, which should be perfect English, all represents you effectively. And again, just want to mention Twitter, which we don't use much here in Cambodia, but is surprisingly an important part of international export connections.
And just to underline what Nancy said briefly about websites, which is outside of the purview of this talk. Again, it's like a business card. Maybe you're just going to have a single page, but it's important to build trust with new prospects and new customers, and that's the kind of thing that can help. So I think questions come at the end, but that's it for our presentation. So thank you very much, and we'd be happy to answer any questions during the Q&A period. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Chris and Nancy, thank you very much. So the next presenter, well, actually very interesting to hear the point about your business partner who had let a junior staff member take control of their social media page and run havoc with it almost. I guess that's one of the key risks of social media, that also a ill-placed social media message really can have a huge detriment to your business as well. in this age. So with that, I have seen a few questions coming through. We will address those at the end. Our next presenter, however, is Carola Kranz of Cult. And so Carola, if you could now share your screen and we can launch the next presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Can you see my screen well?
Yes, we can. Audience members, if you cannot, just type a little message, but we can see. Yes.
Excellent, great. Well, first of all, thank you everybody for joining us today. It's a pleasure to having you all here. A couple of words about myself, just to begin with. My name is Carola Kranz. I'm currently managing director of Colt. I'm a former athlete. I have an MBA and 15 years of experience across the industry: marketing, business development, project management, some hospitality, and also retail. I am very passionate about sustainability and entrepreneurship. I have founded a couple of companies myself, and I'm happy to work with private as well as public entities, mostly on marketing and business development and project management. Since 2 years, I'm working with Colt and have helped grow the platform into the largest in Cambodia. So let's jump right in. What is Colt? Colt stands for Cambodia's Ultimate Lifestyle Trade and is the country's largest platform for sustainable lifestyle brands. All our participants are part of the Colt mission, and they all promote ethical and sustainable lifestyle with products that are consciously designed and produced in Cambodia. As a marketplace, we operate on events and concept store basis. So during non-COVID years, we hold approximately 4 large events per year, celebrating international awareness days like International Women's Day, highlighting women's rights, or Fashion Revolution, a global movement that shines light on the transparency in the supply chain, as well as holidays such as Christmas, of course. Last year, we inaugurated our first pop-up concept store at Exchange Square, where during 3 months, we offered a curated selection of Cambodia's best sustainable lifestyle brands at the mall. Talking about social media, just a couple of words about our own social media. We use our social media predominantly to promote our own events and the brands that are taking part. So in the lead up to each event, we would introduce every brand individually with a post sharing their story, their logo, and a couple of beautiful photos. So people can get a sneak peek of who is participating and get information on how they have been created and more information. On Instagram, we share similar information, but visually matching our Instagram aesthetics. So for this talk about social media for SMEs, we have compiled a list of best practices the brands we have in our portfolio are using to communicate and engage with their followers. As a small disclaimer, this is by no means an exhaustive list. And while it's also useful for the international markets, it's mostly tailored to the Cambodian one. As a brand, you will always want to lead with purpose-driven content that tells your story. People want to know your mission, your vision, your purpose. You want to share the pain points your customers have. You want to identify the pain points your customers have and then tackle them and tell them how you're going to solve them. Amo, for example, a sustainable shoe brand here in Phnom Penh, they have identified the pain point that many foreigners here can't find shoes in their size. And therefore, they're not only offering the necessary larger sizes for foreigners, but they also offer customizable designs for every taste. So it's two problems solved in one. I'm sure by now everybody has seen sponsored posts on their newsfeed. Here we see one of Mona Palette, one of our brands. The time of free advertising on social media is absolutely over, and brands have to pay to play. Facebook makes user segmentation super easy because Facebook over the last years have collected thousands and thousands of data points on every user, making it for marketers very easy to be very specific in the targeting. For example, if Mona, the jewelry designer, wants to reach a larger audience with her earrings, she could go, for example, on Facebook and tell Facebook, I want only girls living in Phnom Penh with being between 17 and 21 years old. And Facebook would target exactly these people and show her ads only to these girls. So it's extremely effective. She's not going to reach anybody that is not interested in her product, avoiding spam. In a further step, if a company already has some data, advertisement data, custom audience can be extremely effective. For example, if you have a website and a shopping cart, people that have visited your website but have not concluded the purchase for whatever reason, they were interrupted or something like that, you can go to your pixel, get an audience, create a custom audience of the people that have visited your website, have products in the basket, but have not finished the purchase. Creating a campaign for only these people is going to be super effective because it's a warm/hot audience, super interested in your products. They were almost buying from you already. They just need this extra little kick to finish the purchase. So this is very effective. And then in a further stage, lookalike audience are fantastic. Again, you would use your custom audience as a baseline, and then create an audience which, as the word says, looks very much alike your custom audience. For example, if you have, you take all the customers that have already bought from you, and you create a lookalike audience that is very similar, has very similar data points as this audience that already have already purchased from you. The likelihood that these new people and a larger audience is going to like your product as well is very high, and their sales are going to be a lot higher. Brand collaborations are an excellent way to increase online as well as offline exposure. In this example, we see the Spirits brand Seekers, which has partnered up with the rooftop bar Lantern. Both brands are benefiting from the fan base of the other brand, and it helps them to reach new audiences. This is particularly useful for complementary brands. Including polls in your social media strategy shows that you're not only interested in your customers' opinion and feedback, it also creates rapport, and it can help you determine customer preferences. So it allows you to adapt your digital content, your copy, and even the production to their preferences. We're talking about data-driven decisions, and we're trying to take the guesswork out of your decision-making process. It is extremely important, as we already have heard before, it's super important to remember that social media is a two-way communication in which we want to encourage the users to engage with the brand. To foster this interaction, what we want to do is to be active and proactive in our communication and respond to comments and direct messages, positive as well as negative, as fast as possible to keep our users happy. There are, of course, plenty of more social media tricks and best practices, but a couple of others our brands use and we really like are the following ones. Contests and giveaways. Who doesn't love to win a goodie bag, right? So giving away something, if a brand gives something away, it shows generosity, and it even allows somebody who might not have purchased from you to try your products and even become a loyal customer afterwards. It's a great way to engage with your users. It's especially effective in collaborations, and it definitely increases new user acquisition. If you master your hashtag strategy, you can get discovered by people that are browsing a specific hashtag. Often more niche-specific hashtags are more effective because, for example, if you're only using foodie, very, very broad hashtags like foodie or travel, these hashtags are mentioned thousands of times per day, and your post is very likely to get lost. Timely posts, knowing when is the best time to post is crucial. And to nail this, we need to know when who your audience is, and when they're online. The big word is influencers. As again, we have already heard a little bit about this. How do they work? it's this big word in the room. Everybody starts to use them, and it's for a reason that it can be extremely effective. Because if you go back to our previous example, Mona, for example, wants to reach a larger audience with her jewelry. She can collaborate with an influencer that has a following, with a jewelry influencer. This influencer has already curated an audience interested in this topic, so the rapport is going to be a lot stronger. And if the influencer then endorses this product, since his followers or her followers trust the influencer, the likelihood that there are more sales is very high. And last but not least, showcase your brand and tell your story. More than ever, people want to hear real stories. They want real brands. They want purpose-driven motives. It's okay to show yourself. You can be transparent. People love to hear how the brands have been created, what challenges the founders have faced, how a brand came together, what social mission the brand is to solve, and, for example, what natural materials are employed in the production process. You can be authentic, engaging, spontaneous, transparent, cool, and above all, be unique. Concluding, we have picked 2 of our brands. We just want to have a very quick look and highlight a couple of points of things we really like about their social media presence. Manava, for example, we love how they feature their mission, their post mix, everything from product to promotion to influencers, the team behind the scenes, how they're creating their baskets and bags, the artisans working on the products, the collaborations they're doing with local designers, everything. It's a very broad mix of content. Their copy is very engaging, very cute in a way, if you want to call it like that. It has a lot of personality and it's absolutely recognizable. And they have developed a style their followers will engage in. It's very repetitive. Their brand, their branding is spot on in terms of social media. All the posts, almost all the posts include a clear call to action, letting their users know what to do, to buy, to sign up for an event, to go to an event if they're participating in one. And yes, number 2 is Mona Pellet. What we love about her social media is she's doing a fantastic job introducing new product lines and campaigns with different colors. So browsing through her feed, it feels like a stroll through the seasons almost. The content mix is also quite diverse. She includes a bunch of video, even with her phone, which is totally fine, recording the production process or how she's doing the designs, and professional video as well as photography. Again, all her posts include call to actions, which is specifically important now. Everybody's online, everybody wants to shop online. Telling people how they can order from you is super important to actually get some sales. And then tricks at a glimpse. Just to summarize at the very end. So very important, a cohesive branding and good visual storytelling to engage your users and to stand out. It's super important to have clear call to actions, telling the users what you want them to do, to order, to sign up, to attend an event. Then to use an engaging content mix, feature your products, the promotions you're doing, the influencers you're working with, user-generated content, your team, etc. Feature a good media mix, videos, images, GIF. You can be super creative. People love to see new things. Definitely include sponsored posts in your strategy to reach a larger audience. And last but not least, the collaborations for strategic positioning and to enhance your brand. Again, the questions are at the end. I'm happy to answer all the questions you have. And thank you very much for listening.
Okay, Carola, thank you very much for that presentation, and great to hear some of the main examples, tips, and tricks that some of the Dorsu brands have been showcasing. Dorsu cold brands. Dorsu is our next speaker that have been showcased. So with that, of course, our next and final speaker is Dorsu. And I'm pleased to be joined by Vanna, who is just next to me now. So I'll share our content.
To Tom and the team for inviting me to be a part of this exciting conversation. Before I start, I just want to give a quick introduction. My name is Vanna, and I'm a Cambodian American who's been back in Cambodia for about 11 years now. Before moving to Cambodia, I lived in Massachusetts, New York, and Washington, D.C., where I received my graduate and undergraduate degrees. And my background prior to Cambodia was in project management for tech, software, and digital design companies. And since being here, I've been privileged to work with prestigious companies like DFS Group and Apple. And last year, my partner and I became the new owners of Dorsu, which is a garment manufacturing company and ethical clothing label based down in Kampot. For those who are unfamiliar with Dorsu and our work, it starts with wanting to provide an alternative for customers who want to avoid the destructive habits of the fast fashion industry. This industry generates billions of tons of waste per year, not only in Cambodia and around the world. From these remnant fabrics, we search for the best quality cotton jersey, which is the material that most of you will be familiar with from your t-shirts. We design and manufacture clothing that's intended to be timeless, high quality, and worn for many, many years. And at the heart of Dorsu is our respect for people and our belief that work in the garment sector can be a viable way of supporting one's family and livelihood with dignity and respect for human beings. We pay above minimum wage salary, we enforce a 5-day work week with time off for family on the weekends, and generally are trying to help push the bar on what being an employer in the garment industry can be. A bit into our business, we design and manufacture our clothing. So we're a vertically integrated company, which can be purchased online by end consumers. Here we have an image of our website, which is our primary direct-to-consumer retail space. And we also produce customized t-shirts and other apparel for B2B customers, both locally in Cambodia and globally as well. Currently, we're exporting to Japan, Australia, Germany, and the United States, to name just a few countries. Here is an example of some of the hundreds of t-shirts that we produced for Atlassian, which is Australia's largest tech company by market cap. This relationship has been strong for over 5 years, and we've developed a lot of amazing followers and supporters from this relationship. We also have a physical presence in Phnom Penh at our studio, Studio Dorsu. So you guys can feel free to come visit us when you have a chance. We also, in order to communicate online with our local customers, we have a private Facebook group, which allows us to share new items that have come in stock and special promotions for in-country customers. We're diving too much into the social media part and how we use social media as an SME. I just want to share a personal reflection that we don't want to be interpreted as saying that social media is the key to all of your business problems. As you can see, Dorsu is a complex and industrial scale business. So our social media strategy and engagement would be nothing without a great team and without a great business model that works for us. And that's supported by a great operations department, an accounting team, logistics and transportation management, an exceptional technical designer, and probably the best pattern maker in all of Cambodia, in my opinion. And without all of these and a clear and effective business model that works, social media would be nothing. And that said, I just want to highlight that in addition to our social media, probably the platform that works the most for us in terms of driving revenue online is our EDM, which is our email communications management. in this day and age where you have the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Googles all controlling their algorithms and changing kind of how content is shared and viewed, it's really, really important to be able to have your own platforms and your own branded presences that people can turn to you for in order to communicate and interact with you. And we find that in terms of investment ROI, it's really our email messaging that works the most for us. But of course, this is about social media. So I'm here to talk a bit about how we use, in particular, Instagram, which is, I think, the kind of primary visual medium for storytelling these days. So this is just a snapshot of our engagement on Instagram. This is our Instagram grid. As you can see, we showcase a lot of behind the scenes, kind of our work with influencers. We showcase images of production and our work with models. It's also a place where we can kind of just give real information about ourselves, what our mission is and what our values are as a company. And it's also a great space to communicate practical information to people. People who are looking to find our retail store, we highlight an Instagram story that gives them clear directions on how to get there from Street 240, in case anybody wants to visit. Also, our Instagram and our social media is a great way for amplifying our earned media and PR. So, we are always, I think, as Chris and Nancy have said, and Carola's touched on, we live in a world that's kind of 24/7 constant content demand generation. And one of the ways that we kind of utilize our platforms is to really look at what we're doing both in the production studio, in our design studio, in our retail space, and what's also happening in the press and media. So for us, we work with companies and organizations and other like-minded groups in Australia and Germany and around the world. So we can, utilize some of that content to share across our social media platforms. So if there's a great, website that's talking about ethical and sustainable brands, we'll share the content that they're posting about us. We were also part of a feature documentary last year called The Conscience of Clothing that has been playing in film festivals around the world. So we're going to share about that when it comes online on YouTube. And last year, one of our co-founders was featured in an interview podcast with the BBC with another prominent figure in the sustainable and ethical fashion space. So we share those interviews. So it's a great way of kind of sharing what you're doing and giving people a peek inside your company and your organization. So showing people who we are and what we do. These are just some examples. We do pop-ups in Russian market, and so we'll publicize about the event beforehand. We share images of our staff working at the events, and for us, because social responsibility is such a big part of what we are and what we do, we're able to share a bit about kind of our commitments and our initiatives in the education space in Cambodia. Of course, there's sensitivities around that. We don't want to be publicizing and utilizing those kinds of initiatives just for a profit, but there are ways that we can sensitively do that through social media. And because we're in the fashion and garment space, I think people are really interested in things like behind the scenes of our photo shoots, going on location with us when we go fabric sourcing, or participating in our design decisions like Carola mentioned. If we can't decide whether or not we should go with a gray or a burgundy color for our next top, then we just ask our audience, which always gives us some really great feedback to work with. Ultimately, I think audience feedback is just that. It's feedback. You use it as part of your discussions, but you're not necessarily going to let the audience drive business decisions at the end of the day. And again, people are very curious now when hopefully in a post-COVID world, learning more about ethical and sustainable fashion brands. So we like to take them behind the scenes. I think transparency is a big keyword in our field and in our space. And so being able to show people, our production process, how we do fabric cutting, our QC process, and giving them a peek inside that is really helpful to reinforcing our commitment to transparency. And we also use our platform as a way to celebrate our customers. I mean, we're in the fashion space and, everybody social media is famous for selfies and everybody's posting. So, when people are tagging our brand or, marking themselves as visiting our store, we're going to share that, and we're going to turn that into content that can be engaging for other people in our audience. I think, as it's been said, social media is a two-way street. You have to be social. It's not just putting media out there and waiting for something to happen. You have to engage with it. And so if people are commenting, make time to respond back. If people are posting about your brand, make time to engage with them. Say thank you. And there are definitely ways and avenues for doing that through messages. So we celebrate our individual customers, but we also celebrate our B2B customers. Like I said, we sell wholesale to retailers around the world, and we produce custom orders for different companies around the world as well. So, I think that line between B2C and B2B is blurring a bit, and so we're able to kind of, as a small company and as a small to medium brand, we're still able to kind of get very personal with our partners and our customers. And then, in the sustainable and ethical garment space, our community is such a big part of who we are and the value, that we want to bring to the world. And so working with other groups in Australia who are working with women refugees in the garment space for the first time, other brands in Cambodia like Pen Len who do some amazing jewelry, or Compost City, which is a group of youth, environmentalists who are looking for ways to reduce waste as well. I mean, these are all ways where we're just taking the work that we do naturally and as part of our day-to-day and sharing it with our community. Like Carola said, social media is really all about being real, being authentic, and showing people who you are. And then also, while our business is kind of centered on designing and making garments, we're also in a space that's, people are very curious about kind of the information and learning more about ethical practices and sustainability in the garment space. So, there's lots of other brands and there's lots of other community members that are putting out amazing information. And with this talk of influencers, I kind of look at our different partners and our different friends and our other organizations and institutions in the community. They're also influencers. These people these organizations have huge followings and they're doing amazing work. So as a brand and as a platform, we want to be able to help share that and spread the word about what else is amazing out there. I think our philosophy to social media is share, and share as much as you can. So that people feel that you're providing something of value rather than just trying to sell them a product. Of course, you're going to need to present product information and people want to know the specs and, all of that good stuff. But you want to show that you're also engaged in a much larger conversation, whether, if you're in agriculture, talking about organic farming practices, or if you're in, tech and the latest software updates to different platforms, or it's all kind of about being social and being engaging with that wider world that the internet and social media allows us to do. So that's it. This is just a peek inside of our production studio in Kampot. So like I said, our business is centered around producing ethically and sustainably made garments, but the world and the space that we're engaged in is a much larger one that social media helps us participate in. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Thank you so much for that tour de force. And great to see an example of an SME using social media so effectively for a Cambodian and international audience. Two of the things I most liked there were getting the audience involved in your business, maybe not making the decisions, but letting them see the decisions that you're making day to day. I've not seen that before, and it's very interesting. And also the emphasis that social media should be social, which I think certainly I've seen many cases where that's not the case. Okay, so we're at 11:13 a.m. at the moment, and I was aware that we were meant to finish the presentation at 11:20. So what we will do is cut out the first part of the moderated discussion, and we will have a 15-minute Q&A where we answer the audience questions, and we will finish at 11:30 a.m. So of course, we won't be able to get through all of the questions, even though questions that were put already put. But I would encourage you to put extra questions now here, because what we can do is any question we do not address during the Q&A, our panelists can potentially address later, and we can add it as a comment to the YouTube video. So the first question I would like to ask this for all panelists, and it's taking influence from a question from Erica, is, as a Cambodian business, how can Cambodian businesses engage with audiences abroad? Indeed, how can businesses, SMEs in Cambodia start to internationalize? And so in particular, I think this may be for Chris, and then maybe Vanna, you can add your thoughts afterwards. So Chris and Nancy, how can brands internationalize? How can they engage audiences abroad?
That is a great question. And actually, I think in our presentation, we talked about target audiences and tools. And I think that's one part of it. And I think another part might be considering influencers and finding people who are engaged around the kind of content that you're or the kind of products that you or services that you sell. So again, it's really all about finding and connecting with different potential communities of buyers or prospects or customers. And Google is your friend on that. Digging in and doing a lot of the research, reaching out to people and engaging with them. And as Vanna was saying, the magic of social media is that it is two-way. So as you reach out, you'll find that people will write back to you, respond to you, engage with you, and that's a great way to find and develop audiences internationally. But I think there's no easy answer to that question. And then I will just underline something Nancy had said, which is you probably are going to need to consider different presence for your international sales than you might have domestically. I mean, even if you look at some of the largest multinational companies, they can afford to have 100 different social media sites in all different countries and languages. Obviously, that's out of reach for small businesses, but you might have a couple of different faces, one for international and one locally. But I think the short answer to that question is it's just a lot of research and a lot of work to try to develop those audiences.
Okay, and Vanna, is there anything you would like to add to Chris' point?
I think Chris is spot on. I mean, I think that there's a much larger, you're probably involved in a much larger discussion and conversation than you're aware of. And your business is probably involved in a much larger conversation around the world. So it's kind of tapping into other, whether you call them influencers or key content makers, or just other organizations that are doing work all across the world. You want to connect with them both online and offline and really understand who they are, and just to engage and to reach out. I mean, you're able to DM, you can slide into anybody's DM pretty much around the world. And if you write something authentic that's coming from a place of genuine curiosity and showing that you're actually interested in what somebody else or what another organization is doing, whether that's the first step of a business development approach, or if it's really genuinely wanting to find out more about an organization, it's social media gives us a lot of those tools to reach out to potential partners, whether that's B2B or B2C.
Okay, perfect. So I hope that addresses that particular question. The next question will bring in a few of the questions I'll kind of amalgamate together. And this question came from David, and I'll address this to all of the panelists. The question is simply, is there one social media platform that rules them all? One social media platform that is the best? And is there a difference between the best platform for B2B and B2C business? And so I'll put this to all the panelists, but perhaps Chris and Nancy, you could start, and then Vanna and Carola can feed in.
Well, I think we actually heard this from everyone who spoke, which is you just need to find the one that works for you. And that means testing and understanding where your prospects and customers are. There's research that shows that Twitter is very effective for export businesses. There's real life experience that shows that Facebook is basically what is social media here in Cambodia. That's not going to be the same elsewhere. So, not exactly an answer to the question of what's the best one, but it's going to be different, and you have to find out what works for you.
Okay, and Vanna, has there been one that?
No, I would 100% agree with Chris again. This is, it's all dependent upon your objectives. If it's B2B, then maybe you're looking at LinkedIn or Twitter. If you're B2C, Facebook and Instagram are vital. If you're looking at a niche thing where you want to be a first mover somewhere where other people aren't yet, go to TikTok, go to Clubhouse. Jinx. But it's, again, I think we're all in agreement from the kind of professional communications perspective. You want to think about what your objective is and what your target is, and then decide what your kind of strategic communications platform will be for that. But like I said in our presentation, we love Instagram, and it's such a great way for us visually to communicate what we're doing.
Okay, just to add on that, for those who are not aware, as myself, I've not come across Clubhouse before. Could you just give an introduction to those members of the audience who may not be aware of what this is?
It's a social audio application. I think it's actually still invitation only, but it's becoming very popular. So you can't post images or text. People go into rooms and hang out and chat with each other.
Yeah, Tom, I'll send you an invitation. It's kind of like being on many conference calls all day long. You can just pop into any chat room, and there's maybe 20, 40, 30, 40 other people in there. The gold is when you can pop into a chat room with a famous designer or a key opinion. You can be in a room with Bill Gates talking about latest innovations in malaria, or you can be in a room with other people, other opinion leaders or thought leaders in your space. So I see a lot of, I think that it's
growing. That space is growing quickly, but I think maybe the most important thing about Clubhouse is just it's a demonstration of the fact that there are always new channels coming along.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Oh, well, very interesting. And Eurochan will look into this as well. So just to finish this question, Carola, is there anything you wanted to add on the most effective social media platform question?
No, I totally agree with Christopher and Vanna. It's definitely where your audience, like, first of all, where's your audience, and meet them where they already are. And then it's very much industry specific. If it's, for example, something very visual like fashion or lifestyle, definitely Instagram is going to be in your mix. If it's B2C or B2B, you're gonna choose LinkedIn, for example, over let's say TikTok if it's B2C. So
Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you very much for the answers from all audience members. One question also that is slightly aligned with one question from David. Of course, with Eurochan and ourselves, our jewel in the crown is our email list. With the rise of social media, do you think there will become a time when email is not seen as an effective marketing tool? Or do you think there is still space for email marketing in today's business environment? Again, this can go to all panelists. I won't nominate one, but okay, Chris and Nancy.
There's plenty of research that shows that email is and remains surprisingly effective, especially as a way to communicate to your existing audience or existing customer base. So, there's a lot of debate about, is email going away? Is that where people are communicating? But for communications between companies and customers, it remains effective.
And I would say, like I said in my presentation, email is our most effective for driving ROI. But I think given the current social media landscape, where these platforms are owned by private companies that can make any decision they want, that may or may not be in your best interest as a business, what happens if Facebook goes away tomorrow? What happens if Instagram disappears? What happens if LinkedIn decides to shut down? What happens if TikTok goes away? if you remove all of those platforms, you don't own them. They're not ours. So being able to have email, I think, is absolutely vital in this world.
Okay, and Carola, would you like to add anything from the perspectives of Colt?
I absolutely agree with both. It is prime real estate. Like with an email, you get to the inbox of an individual. So then it might be read or not, but it's going to be seen because it's in their inbox. With social media, as you heard, it's the likelihood that your posts are seen is very little. And even if you advertise them and put budget behind it, it's not guaranteed that your information and your communication is seen. So email does allow you to reach your consumers and communicate with them individually. And then, of course, you can also segment your audiences and talk to them in a very personal way and only sharing them information they're actually interested in. So yeah, it's very effective.
I'd also like to add that, email should not be the final destination, though, for your customers and for your audience. What we do is use email as a way of driving people to our actual home base, which is our website, which is where the actual content, whether it's an interview or product information, it's really for us because our website is where we convert followers into customers. The website is the most important digital retail space that we have. So email, whether it's driving customers from email into our website or social media into website, you have to recognize that you must have some kind of a digital home base that doesn't belong to somebody else. So your own owned platform, which should be your website.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, all of our panelists, for those answers. We're now at 11:25. For the final question, Aurora from GIZ, this question came from you. I am going to paraphrase it slightly to be a concluding question. And for each panelist, I would like to know the full question was, what tools do SMEs what should SMEs have to improve the quality of social media platforms? But in the interest of closing the event, I would change that to, from each panelist, what would be your number one tip for an SME to get greater engagement today? And then it can be addressed in detail later on. But yes, for each panelist, what is your number one tip you would like to give to your audience members to improve their social media platforms?
Wow, that's a tough one. Maybe I'll take a high level view and say test and measure.
That was going to be mine.
Oh, damn it. But really, the best thing you can do is to find out what's working for you. It's going to be different for everyone. It's going to be different for every audience. With the channels and the content. And the best part about these tools, the social media platforms, is that they have that built into them. So it's quite easy to see what's working and what's not working. So I think that's probably my top tip. Nancy agrees.
Vanette, do you have something different you would like to add?
I would say the top tip for me would be to be authentic and to be real. Your greatest assets are probably things that you're already doing, whether it's your people, whether it's your processes, with how people want to see how the sausage is made. So yeah, being authentic and being real, because I think that's the highest demand that consumers have in the social media world.
Okay, perfect. And open to the final panelist, Carola. What's your number one tip for the audience members today?
Just to add another one, because I absolutely agree with the previous two. We see that video is performing a lot better over static images in terms of engagement, because people are, as soon as when you scroll, videos just captures your attention a lot stronger than images. So yeah, video is recommended for higher engagement and can get higher engagement.
Okay, perfect. So be authentic and real, use video content, and test. Thank you, and test are the top tips. So at 11:28, I must have to say thank you very much to all of our panelists for joining us today. I'll start the close. Audience members, thank you so much for joining us today. We had around 145 people at the peak for this webinar. I apologize, we couldn't get through to all of your questions. I will discuss with the panelists separately as to how we can address some of those on the side. I'm sure any one of the panelists would be happy for you to reach out to them. Some of the questions were to do with this, what contacts can we have? And so we'll do this as a follow-up. Yes, so audience members, thank you very much for joining. Panelists, thank you very much for joining us today. And I also have to say a huge thank you to GIZ and the Arise Plus program. Without their funding for this particular series, these webinars would not be possible. And so we hope this is just the first of a successful series coming up. We will share the slides. We will also share a YouTube link to the last question. And we hope to see you at the next SME Export Talk. So from us, thank you very much and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Close.